Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Human for Hire, Soldier of Fortune, Collateral Damage Included. Human for Hire Series, Book 2. By T.R. Harris. Narrated by Keith Sellon-Wright. Chapter 1. The 6 dark, glistening phantoms rose silently out of the black, inky sea and climbed a ladder to the rickety wooden dock, their armor lit only by the stars ablaze in the night sky and from the glow of a single floodlight at the far end of the wharf. A special chemical on the faceplates cleared the salty water from the lens, providing excellent vision through the visor, enhanced by the wraparound night vision goggles each operative wore. They moved quickly to the end of the dock, cradling suppressed M88A amphibious ballistic weapons at the ready. Seeing no one nearby, the 6 hunkered together at the corner of a weathered wooden shack that served as one of the algae storage houses for the nearby Zephyr Field, located only 2 clicks to the south. Their comms were active. "Alpha Team clear," announced a voice from within the enclosed helmet. Out of habit he whispered, although it wasn't necessary. Only those on the circuit could hear him. "Deliver the package." Through the eerie green glow of the goggles, a phalanx of black humps emerged from the sea along the shore to the north of the wharf. They appeared as silent sea monsters about 40 feet long by 20 wide. On silent tracks, they climbed the sloping sandy beach until half their length lay on the shore, looking like a dozen beached whales who had lost their way. But these whales knew where they were. The rounded ends of the monsters suddenly cracked open and moved to the side, allowing for a full company of black-shrouded soldiers to exit from each phantom and scamper up to the rocky breakwater 100 yards away. They melded with the dark rocks, faces streaked with black and green grease. They carried Xanphi bolt launchers and not the ballistic weapons carried by the armor-encased squad on the dock. Even so, these were special Xanphis that had been modified to fire dull red bolts instead of the blindingly white standard plasma balls. They would still leave glowing streaks of red in the air, but not light up the night like the 4th of July as would standard Xanphis. Everything about the mission screamed stealth, and soon 500 anxious warriors were staged for the raid on the presidential compound a little under 4 miles away on the north side of the town. An assault from the sea was deemed the easiest, since the roads to the palace were monitored with bodies and electronics. The president was a paranoid creature. Tonight would also prove him prophetic. "Did you hear that?" asked Indo Saphir. Although his head was completely enclosed by the metal helmet, external microphones picked up every whisper in the night and relayed them to his headset. Inside his own helmet, Adam Cain nodded. "I felt it too. It's not your imagination." "Rhythmic and getting closer." "It's not one of ours, since we didn't bring anything like that with us," Adam stated unnecessarily. As a professional, he didn't let his concern show in his voice, although he knew instinctively that something wasn't right. The repeating vibrations were familiar and not something to be found in the sleepy town of Shore's End. The president didn't have such weaponry. At least, he wasn't supposed to. "We would have known if Creel had spiders," said Indo. "They are a little hard to hide, and surely Dracu would have heard about them." "That's the problem," Adam said. "Dracu's been flaky recently." "Define flaky? It is not translating." Adam grinned in his helmet. "It means unreliable. He's been unavailable when I've needed him, and when I have talked to him this past week, he was short with me, as if he had better things to do." Indo snorted. "What is more important than executing a coup against the leader of your world? asked Adam's Ansirian teammate. "Do we abort?" Adam shook his head. They'd spent 5 weeks planning the operation and training the strike force. And now the target was nearly in sight, and with all the covering approaches drilled into the heads of the liberators until they could do it in their sleep, or in the dark, as they were about to do. "Not yet," Adam said. "Indo, stay here with Caper and Dallin. You other two, come with me. I want visual confirmation that there are spiders on site before we abort. We're not getting paid to call off operations just because we feel a vibration." Adam rushed off in a crouch along the side of the gray, weathered warehouse, followed closely by his 2 companions. He'd picked the other 5 Indies from the personnel files of Starfire Security, having worked with each of them at one time during the 3 years the company had been in operation. He chose them for their combat skills, discipline, and training in various militaries across the galaxy. They were an eclectic mix, and if mapped out where they came from, it would form a spider web stretching from one end of the Milky Way galaxy to the next. The fact that they were all here now, on this moonless night in the quiet coastal town of Shore's End on the planet Osino, was a miracle in itself. The other miracle was how quickly and smoothly the operation came together, at least until now. "Scout to Alpha Team," said a gravelly voice in Adam's earpiece. "Go ahead, Scout. What is this concern you have for a sound? Please explain." "We detected what could be a robotic fighting tank called a spider. It moves on 6-pointed legs and makes a distinctive vibration when it walks. Indo and I have experienced spiders before. It's better to verify before we proceed." "The timetable is critical," Scout responded. "Shift change in 55. "I realize that. Moving to the watchtower for verification. ETA 10 minutes. Verif in 11. The teams will be ready to move on your command." As Adam and his team slipped among the shadows along the side streets of Shore's End, he was glad for Scout's assistance. Scout, a.k.a. Wilson Pannison, had once been a high-ranking officer in the President's Security Corps until he reached the point where he couldn't take any more of the sadistic manner in which Creel ran his planet. The world of Osino operated on a massive feudal system, with the president/king conscripting every able-bodied individual into the service of the leader. The planet's sole export was a crop of bioengineered algae that grew in gigantic coastal farms in the shallows just offshore of the island nation, the only large landmass on the planet. Slightly larger than Australia, all 7 million of Osino's residents lived here. And since there was no indigenous prime life on the planet, everyone came from someplace else, even if it were generations ago. At the beginning of the colonization, life on Osino was peaceful and basic. That was until it was discovered that the magic algae, used across the galaxy in everything from medicine to makeup, could flourish here. Then the population exploded, and the carpetbaggers moved in. Soon, the strongest and most ruthless ruled the planet, and the new natives, often going back 5 or 6 generations, were called to serve the economy of the island, even if only a few ever benefited from the one and only cash crop. With over 1,000 people a day dying in the soak fields, Wilson had enough. In a very vocal display of insubordination, he left the service of the president and became a renegade and the planet's #1 fugitive. Soon afterward, Wilson was approached by Dracu Hor, one of the 3 exclusive export agents for the algae, about leading a coup against the evil President Creel. Dracu would front the money if Wilson built and trained the army. He agreed, but Wilson also knew he was lacking in the expertise for such a large-scale operation. And that's when he had Dracu contact Starfire Security and enlist the services of the human and his team of mercenaries. Adam reached the aging landmark in the center of town, an ancient watchtower that was the highest point in Shore's End. After breaking the lock on the door, Adam left his 2 operatives to stand guard at street level while he climbed the 229 steps to the crow's nest. The suit he wore was a combination dry suit, scuba gear, and battle armor made of extremely durable and lightweight metal polymer of alien design. To the other members of his team it was bulky and heavy, but to Adam it was like wearing a sweatsuit. He bounded up the stairs, taking 3 at a time, gaining the top in less than 30 seconds, and hardly breaking a sweat. He was used to Earth gravity and not the Gerian standard of Osino, which was at least a quarter less. Even then, Adam often kept the internal gravity in his starship cranked up another 25% above normal Earth gravity, just so he'd have no problem dealing with moments like this. The practice had paid off numerous times in the past. Using the night vision goggles, Adam scanned the town, concentrating on the area in and around the president's compound to the north. A spider stood 40 feet tall and about that much in diameter. They were hard to miss, especially in such a low-tech town as Shore's End. Was there something else that could mimic the sound and vibration of a spider, he wondered? Perhaps a cooling unit or pumping station? He didn't know, but it was better to be safe than— Damn! He didn't even get the line out before he spotted the metal beast reflected in the starlight. And to make his mood even worse, there were 3 of the mechanical beasts, with the other 2 revving up and following the lead spider toward the beach, the same beach where Adam's 500 soldiers awaited his order to proceed. That order was not to come. Instead, "Abort!" he shouted. "I repeat, abort! 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 hostile spiders on the move, heading for Scout's location. Wilson, do you read? Abort mission, return to pods." There was a strange hollowness in Adam's earpiece. When no response came from Wilson, Adam called Indo. "Receiving," his second-in-command called out. "Dead on Wilson's line. I will run a diagnostic." 5 seconds later there was panic in Indo's voice. "Jamming signal. It is not affecting our suits, but all the other comms are offline. They know we are here." "No shit, Sherlock." "What?" "Never mind." Adam could see the spiders picking up speed. Standing as tall as they did, they could travel over most obstacles, but in this case they didn't even bother. They were sticking their long, pointed legs into houses and buildings. It didn't matter, and barreling ahead as they made a beeline for Wilson's position. "Any movement from Wilson's troops?" Adam asked. "Not that I can see," Indo reported. "They are still waiting for your orders." "Send a runner. They only have a couple of minutes before the spiders get there. They need to get back in the pods." "Will do. Sending caper." Adam wasn't surprised when the whole of the presidential compound suddenly came alive. Hundreds of troops, already dressed in combat gear, were flooding from the barracks as flash cannon carriers on half-tracks were charged up and moving to pick up the fighters. Everyone had been waiting for the orders. This was a trap. Adam then looked back toward the shore and the wharf. If this was a trap and Creel knew where and when his troops would be landing, then he wouldn't let them simply slip away back into the dark of the sea. He would have other forces ready to stop the retreat. And that's when Adam saw the sparkling wakes of a dozen or more speedboats come rushing in from both north and south, lining up about 200 yards offshore and behind the submersible pods. Brilliant flash explosions shot off from the boats, signaling the official start of the battle. The bolts targeted the pods, which, as previously referenced, were like a line of beached whales. Adam now saw them as sitting ducks. Explosions rocked the sleepy town awake as startled residents were shaken from their slumber by what sounded like meteor strikes along the shore. People screamed and panicked. some of the victims of the rampaging spiders, others simply running away from the terrifying sounds of battle. Wilson's troops opened fire on the dark bobbing boats in the bay, but none of their flash weapons had the range to reach them. And if the weapons on the boats could reach the troops, they didn't reveal that fact. Instead, they laid off at a safe distance, making sure none of the soldiers escaped by sea. The fate of the revolutionaries lay in the hands and deadly gun turrets of the approaching spiders. Adam was down the stairs 10 seconds later. The faces of his two mercenary companions were painted with anguish, along with a trace of anger. This was supposed to be a simple operation against a minor foe, and not like some of their more elaborate missions. This one was turning into a major clusterfuck, even if none of the aliens knew what a clusterfuck was. Adam's tactical mind was working at full speed. He knew his 500 troops would be a solid opposition force for the soldiers the president was deploying. What changed the dynamic considerably were the spiders. They were hardened battle bots impervious to standard flash weapons. Only larger bolt cannon could affect them. That, and ballistics, such as Adam's team carried. The problem was Adam's mercenaries were on site in more of an advisory role rather than part of the fighting force. They weren't even expected to fire their weapons during the coup, so they came with minimal ammunition. Something that if he got out of here alive he would make sure never let happen again. Fully locked and loaded would be his motto going forward. But they never dreamed they'd be going up against spiders. Not here. Not on Osino. Adam and his team sprinted back to the wharf, unabashedly running down the center of the street along with hundreds of panicking natives. Transport vehicles now clogged the roads with everyone heading south. The presidential compound was on the north side of the city, and that's where all the action would take place. Codename Scout, Wilson Pannison was with Adam's team, having been brought back by Caper. "All my communications are down," he barked at Adam as if the human was personally responsible for the debacle taking place. "I am preparing to disperse my troops. If we scatter, we can survive." "Hold off on that," Adam said. "My team will station ourselves to the flanks of the spiders and see if we can take them out. They're running ahead of the troops from the compound. Your numbers are pretty much on par. If we can cancel out the spiders, you still have a chance." "We were not expecting such a strong and organized response." "I know. But if you scatter now, Creel will just come after all of you a few at a time. You won't get a chance like this again, at least not for years. It's your call, Wilson. They're your troops. I can only give you advice." Wilson looked at the anxious faces of Adam's mercenaries, their faces lit by soft red glows within the helmets from the heads-up displays. "Do what you can. I will monitor your progress. If you cannot defeat the beasts, then we will head south into the southern grove. The elevation is higher there. We could control the high ground." Adam nodded. "That's good. We'll see what we can do against the spiders. The troops from the compound will have trouble getting your people away from the breakwater. You have good coverage there. If you stop the spiders." Adam firmed his jaw. "Yes, if we can stop the spiders." Wilson ran off to rejoin his troops as Adam huddled with his team. "We have two possibilities," he began. "We can try to take out all 3 spiders with the limited ammo we have, but that would be a long shot. Or we can get our hands on one of those half-tracks with the flash cannon. Indo, you and the rest of the team set up positions to fire on the spiders as they come through. I'll go after a half-track." "By yourself?" Indo asked. Adam grinned. "Time to use some of my innate human abilities. What can I say? You guys have been slowing me down." Although everyone smiled and set off on their missions, Adam's mercs knew that what he said was true. He was the human, and that was all that needed to be said. Chapter 2. Adam stripped off the small rebreather unit on the back of his suit. He wouldn't need the diving gear for the rest of the campaign. This made him more compact and even faster in the light gravity. He ran off, not holding back this time. He felt like a gazelle sprinting through the savannah. Unfortunately, in this case it was like a gazelle with a cheetah on its ass. Although the president maintained his residence here, the city of Shores End wasn't very large, with a population of only 25,000. Although the battle had only just begun, it seemed as though most of the people were already gone or were cowering in their homes or cellars in fear. No one was taking up arms for either side. They were content to let things play out as long as they were out of harm's way. Adam could hear the half-tracks. There were 4 of them, rumbling down nearby streets. Each carried a troop complement of 20, with the rest of the force coming on foot. Just then, Adam saw a lumbering shadow pass over him and managed to dive to his right, just as a shiny metal spike crashed through the side of a wooden building only feet away. The spindly leg continued into the sky, reflecting the lights from the numerous buildings that had come on since the beginning of the battle. Adam could clearly see the underside of the spider as it passed over him. He had his M88A, and with just the right targeting there was a chance he could take out the beast on his own, or at least immobilize it. The turrets would still be active but limited in their effectiveness. But he could hear the crashing of the other 2 behind this one. He would let his team take on the spiders while he went after the added firepower from a flash cannon half-track. The spider ignored him, its sights set on the shoreline just north of the wharf. The battle tank could cover the 4-mile distance from the compound to the shore in about 15 minutes. Spiders were powerful, but not especially fast. The half-tracks weren't much faster, but they were deliberately taking their time, preferring to let the spiders soften the target before they got there. This went for the ground troops as well. Adam and his people had spent weeks studying the enemy. He knew that the president's troops weren't that well-trained or motivated. Essoncriel was elected president 6 years ago with a popular mandate. Things only went sour when he upped the production quotas on the algae, requiring near round-the-clock work in the soak fields. This added demand came from the off-world brokers, as well as pressure exerted by the transport agents, such as Dracu Hor. Creel obliged, even though it caused considerable grumbling and unrest among the population. Even then, there were only the occasional mini-riots and work slowdowns, but no outright battles took place. The bottom line? Creel's troops were untested, with the same being said about Wilson's force. All in all, it made for a very amateurish coup. And with the enemy, the president, located in one place, and with one small military force, it shouldn't have been that big of a deal. After all, Titus only charged Dracu 350,000 energy credits. That was a bargain basement rate for organizing a planetary coup. But now, Adam and his team were about to earn every penny of it, and then some. As expected, the small phalanx of half-tracks was leisurely cruising the streets of Shores End, not expecting any resistance until they reached the beach and the dug-in force behind the breakwater. The 4 vehicles were also traveling on separate roads, meaning none were covering the others. It made it almost too simple for Adam. The problem was the 20 troops riding in the back bed. They had battle armor, which was fine against Xanthis. Unfortunately for the soldiers, they provided no protection against ballistics. Adam's M88 carried a 45-round magazine of 5.56 by 45mm cartridges, and he had another 2 magazines in pouches on his utility belt. At full automatic, he could light off 12 rounds a second, which was overkill in this case. He didn't have a lot of ammo, so it was more judicious to keep the weapon on semi-auto. He waited until the black-painted vehicle slid past before stepping out into the street behind it and opening up on the troops riding in the back. The sound of the machine gun was distinctive and echoed off the surrounding buildings, merging with the screams of agony coming from the soldiers as the powerful slugs tore into them. This was warfare very few aliens were used to. Most used the ubiquitous flash weapons with their plasma energy bolts. They went poof, while Adam's weapon went bang. He was running at the back of the half-track before the driver could react to what was happening behind him. Then, using his human-enhanced muscles, Adam leaped to the back, standing with his legs wide apart for balance as he finished off the last of the 20 troops. There were 3 other operators for the vehicle: the driver, the lookout, and the cannon gunner. The driver had gunned the vehicle by now, ramping it up to the head-spinning top speed of around 25 miles per hour. The lookout had his Xanthi pointed out the back window and had already let loose with a couple of shots that went wide. Adam calmly cradled the M88 in his arms and let loose with a quick burst that sprayed the cockpit, killing both the driver and the lookout and blowing out the front window. The vehicle lurched to the left and crashed into the side of a building. Most of the structures in Shore's End were made of wood, so there wasn't a lot of damage to the half-track, although the entire front facade of the building crashed down on the front of the vehicle. The gunner had spun the turret around and was trying to aim it down into the back of the half-track, but it hadn't been designed to do that. Out of frustration, he set off a cannon bolt just the same. Adam had to duck and fall among the bleeding pile of bodies to avoid the heat wave from the bolt. Flash cannon were mainly used in starships. They had about 20 times the power of a standard Xanthi rifle and with significantly longer range to reach starships much further away. They also gave off an incredible amount of heat. Seeing that he couldn't take out the deadly intruder, and knowing that 22 of his companions had been killed by this single soldier, the gunner chose to bail out of the turret. He was about 15 feet up and jumped at an awkward angle. Adam didn't check, but there was a good chance the fall might have killed him, saving Adam the trouble. Adam climbed into the driver's compartment and shoved the bloody carcass through the shattered opening that had once been the front window. Grabbing the joystick control, he pulled back, with the heavy backtracks easily withdrawing the vehicle from the front of the building. "This is Adam," he announced in his helmet. "I have us a flash cannon platform, but I'm going to need a gunner." "Indo here. We have engaged the first spider. We caught it off guard. 2 legs down, and the thing is staggering about. We're about half a mile from the breakwater. I'll send Caper to you. He is the fastest runner. Well, except for you." "Good. I'm on— oh, hell, I don't know how to pronounce the street. It's the one with the blue shopping mart." "He knows where it is. He's on his way." "Where are the ground troops and the other half-tracks?" "The other cannon carriers are still on their way to you along with the spiders. The ground troops are another 10 minutes behind. Get me a gunner and we'll come up behind the spiders and take out the bastards with cannon bolts up their asses." "I admire human phrasing, crude but effective. We'll keep this one occupied until you get here." Just then another half-track appeared from a side street and ahead of Adam's vehicle. Either having heard the battle or been called by the driver before he died, the other tank was coming to help. Adam had a problem. He couldn't both drive the half-track and fire the cannon at the same time, and stopping in the middle of the street to mount the cannon turret would leave him a sitting duck. The opposing vehicle had no such limitations. The gunner was already lining up on Adam. Steering sharply to the left, Adam once again crashed into the front of a building. He felt the heat and the concussion from the cannon bolt that barely missed to the rear. Without a protective windshield, debris from the building rained down on him. And it wasn't just debris. It was a set of floors. The building was old and built of weathered wood and didn't have the strength to withstand having the bottom floor ripped out from under it. Adam had to steer right to get closer to the side of the building as the entire structure collapsed. The heavy treads continued to propel the vehicle until it exited back onto the original street and parallel to the second half-track. Adam gunned the motor, crashing the front of the half-track into the side of the other. This stopped both vehicles, which wasn't a help, At least not for Adam, since it freed up the 20 angry and armed soldiers in the back to begin jumping onto his vehicle with weapons at the ready. Adam kicked open the drive.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?